Hi, this is Josh Marshall from TPMtv. It's Thursday, January 3rd, 2008, and this is episode 7 of our weekly Campaign 2008 Roundup. So today's the big day, the Iowa caucuses. We're going to give you one last rundown of how things look to us on both sides of the aisle. Now, on the Democratic side of the aisle, it's looking more and more like a photo finish. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton have been trading the lead back and forth for the last few weeks, but what's changed recently is John Edwards is now right in the thick of it. He's either a very close third, or in many polls, he's actually second, often ahead of Hillary Clinton. The trend of the very most recent poll seems to have Barack Obama opening up some kind of relatively small lead. There was a Des Moines Register poll just a few days ago that showed him 7 points ahead. But what may be the big story tonight is the second choice voter in the Iowa caucuses. Remember, on the Democratic side, there's a viability threshold, which means if you go to the caucus tonight in Iowa and your candidate doesn't reach a certain threshold, it's a minimum of 15%, but in some smaller caucuses, the threshold is even higher. If your candidate doesn't reach that threshold, then your candidate's out of the running, and you have a choice of either remaining uncommitted or caucusing behind another candidate. What it seems like now is that most of those candidates in the second tier, we're talking about Joe Biden, Richardson, Dennis Kucinich, etc., a lot of those candidates, their supporters seem likely to go with Barack Obama. And in some cases, in the case of Dennis Kucinich, for instance, Kucinich is actually asking his supporters, if Kucinich doesn't meet the viability threshold in their caucus, to go with Barack Obama. So that could end up playing a big role. There's upwards of 20% of the Democratic electorate that's going to be at these caucuses that supports that is either undecided or supports a candidate that probably isn't going to meet the viability threshold. So that means there's a lot of support out there that could swing decisively in one direction or another. And it's seeming now, although again, it's all sort of reading tea leaves, it's seeming that that is going to help Barack Obama a lot. Now to the Republican side of the aisle, a very different picture. As we said yesterday, you've got Rudy Giuliani. He's just dropping like a stone, tumbling almost out of this race. The question is whether he's even going to beat Ron Paul tonight in the Iowa caucuses. Then you've got Fred Thompson. He was just on TV a couple hours ago. He could barely get up the energy to say he'd stay in the race after tonight. So these two are, you know, it's not good for either one of those guys. Now, the energy in the Republican race overall has swung in the direction of a candidate who actually isn't even showing up that well in Iowa, and that's John McCain, the candidate who was pretty much written off as recently as a month ago, but he's now either a close second or tied or perhaps even ahead of Mitt Romney in New Hampshire. Now that's New Hampshire, but what happens tonight in Iowa is going to have a lot to do with the final outcome in New Hampshire and what happens over the successive weeks till the beginning of February, when probably this whole contest is going to be decided. The race right now seems to be neck and neck between Mitt Romney and Mike Huckabee. Huckabee's been in the lead for a couple weeks, but his lead seems to be fading, and some polls have Romney back out ahead. So what happens tonight? If Mitt Romney loses to Mike Huckabee tonight, that's going to put him in a really tough position going into New Hampshire, because the momentum is already against him in New Hampshire, and that will probably lead to all sorts of new headlines about Romney defeated. The sort of the air of defeat will attach to Romney, and that will really give John McCain a leg up to build on the momentum he already has, and thus possibly leaving Mitt Romney with 2 successive defeats in Iowa and New Hampshire in the 2 states he was supposed to win handily to stitch up the nomination. On the other hand, if Mitt Romney can pull this out tonight in Iowa, he'll have a real claim to having made a political comeback, and this race, I think, will pretty clearly come down to a 2-man race from here on out between John McCain and Mitt Romney, with a big showdown coming in New Hampshire. Now remember, New Hampshire is right next door to Massachusetts. Actually, a lot of southern New Hampshire is actually in the Massachusetts media market. So this is home turf for Mitt Romney. He should do well there, but it's also a good state for John McCain. And here's the other thing to keep in mind. If Mitt Romney has a bad night tonight, and even more if John McCain comes in with a strong third-place showing, the guys in the D.C. press corps absolutely love John McCain. You think about Howard Feynman, Chris Matthews, Mark Halperin. They love this guy, and they're just waiting for the McCain comeback to actually happen so that they can make that the story of the rest of the campaign. So if McCain is the big story tonight, the coverage tomorrow is going to have more man love in it from these guys than you can shake a stick at. And New Hampshire is going to be like Tales of the City, just with some snow sprinkled on top. Okay, so that's the big picture. On the Democratic side, watch how those second choice voters break, whether they break for Obama or whether Hillary can pull this out. And on the Republican side, see if Mitt Romney can pull out a victory in Iowa in time to head off the coming Feynman-McCain flufftacular. I'm Josh Marshall from TPM Media, and we'll talk to you next week.